graph, the period of time which a corporate or a corporation can enjoy a period of dominance is shrinking. So it's important to come up with something new as well. Innovations can disrupt companies and industries in only a few years. And there's many examples of that if we think about things like, I just recently, a few moments ago, I saw my daughter took an Uber because I pay for that. So just thinking about Uber, for example, something that disrupted the industry, the travel industry quite a bit. Then the natural business cycle has been dramatically accelerated by the disruptive power of technology, and no business is immune from this disruption. If I think about our own at JVR, our own, the changes that came because of technology. Previously, we said we are a company of psychologists, but now we almost say we are a company of technologists, focusing a lot on technology as well. And all of these things calls for a more entrepreneurial approach. Let me just get my mouse going. In South Africa, it seems that male entrepreneurs are still more prevalent than females, but the gap is getting smaller. Then the majority of entrepreneurs surveyed classified as youth. However, there's also a bit of a decline in that. 65% of the respondents that took part in Seed Academy's survey had a post-matric qualification, and more than a third of the sample ran their businesses while having full-time jobs. So also saying that maybe just invest or put all your eggs in one basket from the start, but maybe have a full-time job and then start building something on the side if your full-time job allows for that. Motivation to start a job in South Africa, 42% identified an opportunity. So which means they have to be alert. They have to know what's going on. They have to read papers. They have to be on the internet. They have to be curious. So they should be able to identify an opportunity. 22% wanted to be their own boss. 14% wanted to utilize their skills. And only 4% said so because they couldn't find a job. So that's quite interesting. Now, I know in South Africa, we also have a very high unemployment rate, and therefore, people should actually also be able to go into or be entrepreneurial, and be also build those skills among youngsters as well who can't find a job. Furthermore, some reasons for success that the respondents have indicated. Firstly, that strong personal networks. Like they say, it's not how many people you know, but it's all about who you know. And in this instance, I don't necessarily refer to nepotism. Please hear me. What is, however, important is if you can network very well, and if you can use those personal networks to broaden your networks, of course, it's very positive. In the end, even if you get a job or if you become part of an entrepreneurial business, you still have to show that you can actually do it, whether you knew someone when you started with the job or not. 19% said business support helped them, therefore they were successful in terms of entrepreneurship. 17% said they did proper business planning, which we know the strategic side of a business is very important. And 16% said they had access to funding, and that is, of course, always very useful if there's funding involved or available. And then 78% of the respondents were engaged with either a training program or an incubator. So also showing that training, development, support, all of those things are actually really important in terms of successful entrepreneurship. Some of the major challenges, finding a customer base or establishing a customer base, inability to raise funds, lack of guidance, having to fulfill too many roles at the same time because you are the chief cook and bottle washer when you start a business, slow or lost sales, and then unpredictability of business and customers. And we also know that in the last year or two with the pandemic that hangs around us, many businesses that actually started, they actually had to close their doors. I know of a couple of businesses that actually started during pandemic or right at the beginning of last year, and they just couldn't make it. It was just too difficult. So maybe I can ask the audience, what do 70% of entrepreneurs have in common? Is there anyone that would like to take a guess? And Tracy, if someone puts something in the chat box, let me see. Risk takers, ambition, probably those things as well. But those are the positive things. Maybe if we think a little bit more negatively, this is actually what 70% of entrepreneurs have in common. 70% of them actually fail. And you might be surprised by that big number, but that is actually the truth. So yes, there's a whole lot of stuff that's needed in order to be successful. Actually, you actually need a lot of specific personality traits to actually start a business as well. So, and all those things like motivation are also important. Now, in order to become an entrepreneur, there's two basic rules. The first one is there's certain ingredients that we need. So in the person, him or herself, there's quite a bit of individual ingredients that's needed. So the amount of information or knowledge that you have about a business and becoming and starting a business, that's of course very important. And then also the ability and the willingness to connect these pieces of information in a new way. And that specifically speaks to personality characteristics as well. So that's the one type of ingredient. And then, of course, we also need an ecosystem or an entrepreneurial ecosystem where people can, where they should have access to resources, and they should be allowed to come up with new ideas, and they should be allowed to start with a new business. Usually it should be a safe environment also where failure is okay. We know of a couple of organizations that actually created innovation hubs or entrepreneurial hubs. And many of those also, they closed doors as well. So it would be a hub within a company because they probably didn't also have the right infrastructure, or they also didn't have the right people with the right ingredients in those environments. So maybe just to give another perspective of that, where we say entrepreneurial talent, which is the individual, is really important. And then also we need the ecosystem, and those two together will actually lead to innovation or successful entrepreneurial businesses or a successful output. What we need to understand is that all of these things are relative and contextual. So we cannot say because someone has these characteristics, they will definitely be successful. They just have a much better chance if they are put into the right ecosystem, if they have the right support, if they have the right environment in which they can do that. So maybe looking at how do we measure entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial talent. Now the meta, let me just quickly go there. If we talk about, let me do this. If we talk about a measurement of that. The META is the measure for entrepreneurial talent and abilities. And they've looked at what the research said. Excuse me, let me just, they've looked at what the research said. And according to research and according to a whole lot of people that they've assessed, they found that there are 3 work areas. The first one is ideation. The next one is execution, and the next one is leadership. So broad constructs. And within each of those work areas, for example, ideation, there's 3 smaller building blocks, something like curiosity, creativity, and opportunism. So you already see now by breaking it down into smaller building blocks, if we just think, we already talked about curiosity, for example, we've talked about being able to see opportunities. So those, the second column will actually give you a much better idea of what these different characteristics are that we are looking at when we talk about entrepreneurial talent and abilities. But I'll go through all of these individually just now. So maybe just to quickly give you an idea of what the model looks like, that the META, the measure for entrepreneurial talents and abilities, that this is the model that they use. Now, the more than 10 years of research has been done by UCL and Harvard and New York University, and more than 250,000 people across 25 countries, and I think this is even a little bit more by now, have already done this assessment, and more than 100 empirical studies have been done already. The META was developed by a group of psychologists, business psychologists, and scientists and academics. So therefore, we also know that empirical studies are very important to them. The specific assessment demonstrated an accuracy in identifying potential, regardless of ethnic background, socioeconomic status, and demographics. It's easily accessible to anyone, and one can complete it within a few minutes. And it is also, the assessment has the potential to enable people who would otherwise never get a chance to access support and funding. So although the assessment was developed internationally, at JVR, we also have South African norms. We've done South African research. We are in the agreement that it does identify potential regardless of background, status, or demographics. How we use this very often is some organizations, specifically when there's funding involved, they would ask all the applicants to complete the META, and then we will have to give them feedback on that. We will have to give them a report to say, who do we think has a very good chance to be successful in terms of entrepreneurship. But then you must also remember again, it's not only the entrepreneurial talents and abilities that are actually determining success as an entrepreneur. It's also the whole eco-structure that's around them that helps to develop this. But this is at least one area or one measure where one can get a bit of an indication of what's the potential for this person to be successful in terms of entrepreneurship. When we look at the META and how we interpret the scores, usually people who have higher scores, they usually are good with starting and running their own businesses. And we also know that everyone can improve some aspect of his or her entrepreneurial performance. So another way that we use the META, for example, is where there's a group of people who'd already been selected into a program. They would complete the META, and we will build a personal development plan for them according to these different building blocks where they actually where they can further develop that specific ability or skill. We know that entrepreneurial business are useful in any work environment. If I just think about the people that work with me as well, we all have to have an entrepreneurial mindset as well, because we also have to build the business from within. People very often call that entrepreneurship, but anyone that has that entrepreneurial mindset and behaviors is actually very, very valuable in any organization. What we also know is that people with high scores on this meter may be more likely to look for new opportunities to start a business. But within an organization, they would also be those that are look for opportunities to find new business for the current organization that they are also working for. Maybe just quickly, and we're not going to go through all of them. Here at the bottom, you will see the smaller building blocks that are measured. And when we look at successful versus unsuccessful entrepreneurs, we saw that continuously people who scored higher on the meta, those are the ones, or the ones who are more successful, they actually scored higher on the meta. So it was clear. It also showed us that it's an accurate assessment. You can ignore the last three. It's just three extra, almost a little bit more clinical assessment of that's linked to that as well. And we don't always use that. So for now, you can ignore that. If we look at the results here, the green, it's how the people were likely to start business within 1 year. And then in the red, people likely to start a business in 5 years. And then the green, people not likely to start a business in 5 years. So you will also see that the meta actually also distinguish between those, whether they are going to start a business or whether they are not going to start a business, and also even the time frame into that. And then just something very interesting as well, just briefly touch on this, that if we look at people who score high on the measurement versus people who score low on the measurement, if we look at their brain activation, it's very interesting to see that people, when they are people who score higher, they are usually more goal-directed, or the areas that are getting highlighted with their brain profiles are linked to being more goal-directed, learning and positive effect, learning to correct mistakes, sustaining attention, self-awareness, always important, readiness potential, and then also semantic memory processing. So clearly it's interesting that there's also different brain profiles for people who are actually more entrepreneurial than those who are less entrepreneurial. So let's quickly go through, we have about 20 minutes or so. Let's see if we can quickly go through just what do these abilities and talents and characteristics, what do they actually refer to? And I've also tried to add a little bit of development things. So although we have a formal assessment for entrepreneurial talent and abilities, we don't always need that. If, for example, you don't have the time to do it, or of course there is a little bit of a cost involved there, if you can't afford that, at least if you know about the different kinds of things that are important in terms of entrepreneurship, you can do a self-assessment, and or you can ask other people, how do they perceive you? And you can actually then actually also work on that to further develop that. So let's start with the first work area, which is ideation. And the definition for that is the ability to come up with new business ideas. And that consists of 3 smaller building blocks. And so let's look at curiosity, creativity, and opportunism for now. So curiosity, what do we mean by that? It's where someone is looking for new experiences, someone that's trying new ways of thinking and doing things, and being interested in what's new and different. So curiosity doesn't mean going and scratch into other people's bags, literally, but it means also almost sometimes going to scratch in some people's minds and asking them questions and looking for new opportunities, and be in the moment and know what's going on around you as well. So I'm not going to, for each and every one, look at this. I will also make the slides available. But people who are very or score high on curiosity, they like changes and they like to adapt to them. They can adapt to them. They always follow new trends and they love networking. And even if you think about the new world of work, and during a previous webinar, we also talked about getting ready for the new world of work. Being able to adjust to the changes and the challenges is actually very important for everyone in this new world of work. So curiosity, a very important trait for being a successful entrepreneur. Now, if you are not very good with being curious, there's a few basic things that one can do. So for example, just always keep an open mind and keep on asking questions. And read about topics that you do not know anything about. If I think about some of the buzzwords, artificial intelligence, for example, or emotional intelligence, for example, if you don't know what those things mean, Google is fantastic. Google is almost my best friend. Maybe not always very scientific, but at least it points me into a direction as to where I can find more information about that as well. So yes, become more curious. The next sub-building block is creativity. And with that, we mean coming up with original ideas and creating and inventing new things. Now we do know that sometimes people's creativity starts with an idea of someone else. And that's also good. All of us don't have to come up with new and original ideas all the time, but we need to try and just foster that mindset as well of creativity. Trying to think outside of the box, identify new problems and new ways to solve them, and also handle difficult tasks. Try to handle difficult tasks in a more creative way. So creativity, very important. If, for example, you find that you are not that creative, it's very good. And if you have a business idea that needs a little bit of creativity, it's always good to partner with other people who are creative so that you can together then actually build that business. Practice brainstorming is a very good idea where you just, without any filters on, you just come up with as many ideas as possible, how ridiculous they might be or not. So keep doing that. Spend more time with creative people and then also broaden your horizons by also reading or by, attending different, even I'm just thinking, even if you just attend a music concert, that in itself, there's also an opportunity for building your creativity. Then the last small building block for that area is opportunism. Now, very often people think that opportunism is a very negative characteristic trait, because in the negative sense, opportunism means that you will, regardless of what the impact of what you do is on other people, you will take that chance. And I think that's actually a very negative seeing of opportunism. But with opportunism, in this instance, with regards to the meta, we refer to the ability to spot new business opportunities, and the ability to being alert, informed, and finding out about future trends. So you will see how it also links on to curiosity. So being curious, because if you're curious, you'll be able to also spot new business opportunities. And people who are measuring high on opportunism, they are alert to new business ideas and trends. They are interested in new opportunities, and they make connections between events that do not necessarily seem to be related. So they will very often see an opportunity, they will be reminded of something completely different, and they will make that link, and that in itself will provide them with a high level of creativity as well. Okay, so that's the 3 work areas, maybe just a few development tips. Actively build your networks. So it also means that you actually have to have good interpersonal relationship skills, and you have to have a good level of self-regard and self-confidence so that you can actually go out and build networks. You have to keep on working hard, and then, of course, be wide awake, listen, 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 and read, read, read. Look out for opportunities. You know, if you're waiting for the Uber and there's someone next to you, you know, ask him or her what they are doing. Be curious on maybe there's an opportunity in what they are saying. Good. So that was the first work area. The second work area that is being measured by the meta is execution. So very often we know that people have all these ideas, and they are full of ideas, and they are getting excited about all the ideas, but very often that's where it stops. If I think about my husband, for example, I always say if we could just put all his ideas into practice, we would have been stinking rich. But unfortunately, very often his ideas just stop at being an idea. So we should also be able to execute, to put into practice, to realize the idea in real life. The 3 characteristics that relate to that is belief, proactivity, and resilience. So quickly, if we look at belief, belief means the courage to stick to what you believe is right, rather than trying to please others. So it also means, again, having to have a good confidence, believing in yourself, believing that even if other people say, you know, this is not going to work, if you stick with your idea and if you really are resilient, then you have a higher chance of being successful, not being influenced by other people's opinions all the time. So being confident and self-assured, stand up for what you believe in, and do what you think is right, regardless of what others say. Okay, so that's people with high belief. And some development tips. Visualization is a great tool. If you can close your eyes and you can see yourself or picture yourself, what will it look like when you have built this business? What will it look like when you are successful? Visualization, what it actually does is when you visualize something, next time when you get into a similar kind of situation, your brain actually thinks that you have already done this, which means it's very powerful. So visualization is great. Do one thing that scares you every day, and then set yourself up to win. If I just think about the second one, I've got a university student. My son is first year at university, and the other day he asked me, so Mom, what did you learn today? We actually asked something like, what did you do that was difficult for you, but you learned to get it right? And I had to think very clearly about that, and I couldn't come up with something. And since then, I've also decided that each day I need to try something new. How small it might be or not. So it's just being that openness as well, and believing in yourself. Proactivity, not just sitting with that idea, but taking charge of a project and get stuff done. Having the energy and the confidence and taking responsibility. So people who measure high on proactivity, they get a lot done. They get up in the mornings, they have a plan, they know what they want to achieve, there's certain goals that they want to reach, and they get that done. They very often have a list, and they tick off the things that they actually wanted to do for that day. They are usually energetic and enthusiastic and confident, and they are goal focused. They know what they want, and they know what they want to achieve for that day, but also for that specific business idea of theirs. How to develop that? It's good to be solution focused. So think about solution focus also means have a positive mindset and trying to find solutions or creative solutions to not only problems, but also ideas, decision making, come up with new interesting solutions to that. Then the next one is actually straightforward, get off your seat and just stop procrastinating and stop dreaming and just actually get something done. And then also surround yourself with motivated people. We know that motivation is actually contagious, so make sure that you find yourself in the right environment. Also thinking about, you have to have the characteristics, but you have to have the right environment. So choose your environment very wisely as well. And then resilience. These days, we are doing a lot of work on resilience at JVR, for example, having a lot of resilience programs. What do we mean by resilience? It's the ability to recover quickly from difficulties, or to be tough in the face of challenges. And at JVR, we also like to think that resilience is not only the ability to bounce back, but also the ability to bounce forward. So, learning in the process as well, so that you are stronger after the challenge. No, the other way around. So high scorers on resilience, they've got a growth mindset. For those of you who don't know about growth mindset and fixed mindset, you must please go and read about that, because the whole idea of growth mindset is never to say, I cannot do that, maybe to say, I cannot do that yet. So there's a power of yet that they actually call it. Resilience is also people who measure high, they believe in hard work over luck or fate, and they give 100%, even at boring tasks. That is actually boring tasks form part of any entrepreneurial concern as well. Some development tips: always maintain a positive outlook and be optimistic. Have meaningful goals and achieve them, and then of course take care of yourself. And with that, the building blocks, we always have to think about how much sleep you get, nutrients, or do you eat properly, and do you eat enough? And also, of course, a very important one that we are very often lazy to do is physical exercise. Then if we look at the last work area, which is leadership, referring to leading new developments, leading people and teams, and leading people and teams who also come up with development. So very often when we are younger, we think, this is actually not important right now, I can't be a leader yet. But remember, this also has to do with leading yourself. So even if you don't do it on the level of a CEO, it's something to aspire to. So the first one, vision, is the ability to see the bigger picture and being motivated to make things better, bring change, and going forward in life. If I think about Ludwig Marashana, for example, seeing the bigger picture in terms of his excel at university or excel at uni, wanting to make things better for the world out there, making things better for the youth, making things better for, or preparing the youth for the workplace. That is actually vision. So his vision actually also helped him to start off with that idea. People who score high on vision, they are motivated to improve things and not just go on in this. If something is working, they just see, what do people say? If something is working, don't change it. People with a high vision actually don't think in that way. They think big, and they can inspire others to also think big or to think differently. Always keep the bigger picture in mind. Stay up to date with new developments, because new developments also provide you very often with your own new ideas as well. And then also maintain a positive attitude or a positive approach. Authority, it means the ability to communicate a vision. So yes, you have to have the vision, but then you also need to be able to communicate that vision specifically when, for example, you are applying for funding, or if you are looking for investors in the business or the entrepreneurial concern that you are visualizing. Taking charge of situations and then also taking control and directing others. Specifically, if you are working with other people, people who have a high level of authority, they are very often the motivator as well. They need to motivate other people. So people who measure high on authority, they enjoy making big decisions. They easily take on leadership roles, also mean that they have done this before and that they trust themselves. And then they are also good at holding attention and directing discussions. So also good listening abilities. To develop that further is important to express your views. So you have to have a high level of self-expression as well and trusting your own views, and also being able to defend your position. So don't give in if you have any resistance about your views. Don't just give in, but defend your position. Take charge of projects that are aligned to your expertise. And then also know what your vision is and practice to communicate that clearly to other people. And then stability is the building block that we refer to, where someone needs to be able to stay calm and positive under pressure in new situations and with new challenges. And this very much is in line with the whole concept of resilience as well, or stress management as well. So being emotionally stable as well. Usually people who measure high on this building block, they don't lose effectiveness under pressure, so they can cope effectively with pressure. Again, they can build strong networks and they are reliable. They say what they do and what they can do. What they say they will do, they will do. Some development tips, using constructive feedback to learn and develop. So being open for feedback, asking other people for feedback, and don't try to be defensive about that, but rather be open to learn from that. And then develop coping strategies and work on your resilience and develop stress management strategies to deal with challenging situations and setbacks. And then also, again, building trusting, stable networks, which also speaks of the environment. So again, there's a whole lot in terms of the person, him or herself, their characteristics, but also the networks around them. Okay, so that was felt a bit like a marathon. Sorry, it was really very quickly and a quick overview of that. But hopefully it gave you a few ideas, and maybe maybe you can relate to some of the constructs and some of the concepts. So Tracy, yes, I'm not sure if there's any questions or any comments even, please.
Thank you, Karina. It's so very interesting. I'm looking at it also from